Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in the Northwest Territories, where an ongoing legal dispute between Indigenous groups over land use rights saw movement in the NWT Supreme Court. But as Nadir Hashmi tells us, the dispute is still far from over.
The Catalodeche First Nation, or KFN, is asking the court to prevent the Hay River Métis organization and its president Trevor Beck from hunting and using parts of his traditional territory. This court case has been going on since 2020. What began as a dispute over unauthorized construction has turned into a fight to assert rights over traditional lands. Last week, a judge ruled that KFN can question the Hay River Métis organization over some evidence. This evidence was related to the occupancy of the Buffalo Lake and Hay River areas by Métis before 1921. The KFN said in an email response to CBC that the Métis organization and Beck refused to provide documentation to support their claims. The defense says the judge's ruling is simply a procedural matter.
It goes to an instance where essentially the two lawyers disagreed on how something should be resolved. It was put into the hands of the court, and the court has now made a ruling.
In a statement to CBC, a spokesperson for the NWT government said this court ruling does not directly involve the territorial government. She said the territory will continue working with Indigenous government and organizations to develop an approach for managing traditional use camps and cabins on public land. Cooper describes the dispute as a family fight.
What is really unfortunate about all this is that there's the same roots, the same great-grandparents, the same great-great-grandparents.
He says shared land use could be a solution. Cooper also says these sort of disputes happen in many parts of Canada.
It's not unusual to have these sorts of tensions, but the unique history of First Nations and Métis in this country make it fairly ripe grounds for these types of disputes.
The lawyers say both sides are still sharing records and evidence, so a trial is still several years away. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Canada's premiers are in Washington, D.C. this week. They're speaking to members of the Trump administration, Congress, and business leaders. The goal is to strengthen the economic relationship between the two countries. Yesterday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced tariffs on steel and aluminum. Yukon Premier Ranj Pillay says the Canadian delegation wants to talk about the consequences of those tariffs to people who have the president's ear.
Really about educating U.S. lawmakers about what the impacts are. It's about ensuring that they know how this will affect the voters that they represent in their constituencies. There could be, with retaliatory measures, there could be immense pressure put on them individually.
Pillay says it's still unclear what the tariffs on steel and aluminum will mean for building infrastructure in the Yukon. An NWT MLA says Inuvik, not Iqaluit, should be the home of an Arctic military base. Yesterday, federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said he would build a permanent military base in Nunavut's capital if he's elected prime minister. Poilievre said Iqaluit has a functional airport and seaport that can accommodate both the Navy and Air Force. But Inuvik Boot Lake MLA Denny Rogers says his community also has necessary infrastructure. Here's what he told NWT MLAs.
Mr. Speaker, I was discouraged to hear the Leader of the Opposition publicly announce that they're going to be looking at building a new Arctic military base in Iqaluit. Not to disparage our friends in Nunavut, but Mr. Speaker, Inuvik has an FOL base with an airstrip that has been extended, as we know, to accept the latest USA fighter jets, and the strip will continue to be upgraded and fully tarred up there, Mr. Speaker. Inuvik, as you know, is already a NORAD base with the existing capacity to immediately house 250 military personnel, and it can readily accept the need for an expanded military base and supporting infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I'll be urging the Premier to reach out to whoever the next Prime Minister will be, to certainly let them know that we expect the government to commit to not only fully funding the Mackenzie Valley Highway up to Sigachik to join into the Dempster Highway, but certainly to make sure they do their homework and to realize that the practical reality is that Inuvik is best suited for this type of infrastructure, Mr. Speaker.
That was NWT MLA Denny Rogers. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in Paris today. He warned that tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum not only hurt both countries, but also a state that Vance cares deeply about. Ashley Burke has that story.
At a summit in Paris, the Prime Minister pushing back against Donald Trump's latest threat.
Tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum would be entirely unjustified. We are the U.S.'s closest ally. Our economies are integrated.
A message he took directly to U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. The event's cameras only briefly caught their exchange in this crowd of world leaders away from the media. Trudeau's photographer close enough to take photos. A Canadian official says the Prime Minister mentioned to Vance the impact of tariffs in his home state, Ohio. Trudeau has publicly warned that a trade war will only drive up American costs. In the U.S., Ohio is the biggest exporter of goods to Canada, and it's where Trump's promising to revive American steelmaking jobs.
We will be working with the American administration over the coming weeks to highlight the negative impacts on Americans and Canadians of these unacceptable tariffs. And if it comes to that, our response, of course, will be firm and clear.
But Trudeau isn't revealing details.
Will you reciprocate dollar for dollar with tariffs on aluminum and steel?
As usual, we hope that it will not come to that.
Vance also isn't saying if Canada could get an exemption.
Why are you slapping tariffs on steel and aluminum? Why are you slapping tariffs?
The Trump administration believes that
This AI summit, his first international trip to represent Trump's next era of America First on the world stage.
the United States of America is the leader in AI, and our administration plans to keep it that way.
Trudeau says he's speaking to other countries to coordinate a response. The Prime Minister will leave Paris to head to Brussels on Wednesday to sit down with European Union leaders who are also bracing for tariffs to hit them too. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Paris.
A major northern infrastructure project is rebranding itself. The goal is to make it easier for non-northerners to understand the project. The Grays Bay Road and Port Project would see a road built from Yellowknife to the Arctic Ocean. That project is now called the Arctic Security Corridor. The CEO of the West-Kitimute Resources Corporation says with all the recent focus on the Arctic, the company is getting a lot of requests to explain where Grays Bay is.
It's always helpful to have maps for them to be able to relate to. So we're hoping that this will become a tool that politicians can utilize to explain the story.
Bell says the new name should make things clearer, especially to those who live in southern Canada and the United States. The project is still in the planning phase and was recently recommended for an environmental review. Nunavik police officers are looking to buy devices that would allow them to monitor the condition of people in custody. The sensors allow officers to check the breathing and heartbeats of detainees. They're already used by other police services in Canada. Nunavik's interest in the devices comes after Quebec prosecutors decided not to press charges in a 2023 holding cell death. The Deputy Chief of Operations for the Nunavik Police Service says they're currently in talks with the manufacturer.
It's not something that's complicated and long to put in place. So we're really confident that like in 2025, that we're going to be able to have that installed in our police stations.
Morin also says Nunavik police are considering hiring an independent security agency to monitor people in cells. Nunavut's newest Inuk police recruit says he's excited to become part of the community he's now serving. Constable Inuki Burke is the first Inuk cadet recruited from Nunavut to graduate from the RCMP Academy since 2003. The 21-year-old says the training was long and grueling, but it was worth it to be able to put on the RCMP uniform.
When I was 15 or 16 years old, around there, I joined the men's senior hockey league, and I got to play with the RCMP guys, And they're all such great guys. You know, they're all so cheerful, such great, genuine guys. And
Burke's parents and extended family were there to cheer him on at the graduation ceremony. Corporal George Henry is another Inuk RCMP member in Nunavut. He says Burke is an inspiration.
I was really happy, very proud of him. It brought me back to when I graduated back in 2002. A lot of I understood what he felt, the accomplishment, the pride, and everything he has struggled with and all the work he put in to get to that point.
Constable Burke has been stationed in Cambridge Bay since mid-January. He says it's been a welcoming experience so far. His advice to others thinking of joining the police force is start your cardio training now. Tyrone Apek's family realized he was legally deaf when he was a toddler. Growing up, that posed some challenges for the Sunirayak resident, but now he's proudly sharing his story in hopes of inspiring others. The CBC's Samuel Watt sat down with Tyrone. His words are interpreted by his sign language teacher, Dinah Pikuyak.
My name is Tyrone, Tyrone Apek.
And he's proud to call himself a person with a disability, though it's taken him some years to get to this point.
When the phone rings, and he used to go and talk to his grandfather and grandmother a lot on the phone, until when he got sick at the 18-month-old and stopped hearing.
He didn't realize he had that disability until he started school. His sign language teacher, Dinah Pikuyak, started working with him when he was in grade 5.
When I first started working with him, he didn't want to communicate with anybody and not able to look at anybody, just being blinked. And
she also understands how isolating that can feel. She began to lose hearing when she was a child, but she realized she couldn't change that part of her, so she learned to embrace it, and she helps others at the school do that as well.
I start showing them my hearing aid, and I always tell them they're not different from anybody. They start to manage that they're not alone and accepting what they have and what they need.
Research published in the International Journal of Audiology estimates 1 in 5 children in the Canadian Arctic have hearing loss that affects their development. Pikuyak says 1 in 4 students at the school need a hearing aid. She believes there are simple steps to be more inclusive, learning some sign language, for example, and treating everybody with kindness.
I always tell them they're not different from anybody, and I try and get them to try and treat everyone the same.
And it's that inclusive approach that helps everybody thrive. In 2023, Tyrone became the first deaf person to get a driver's license in Sunirayak, and for 5 years, he's been a proud staple at the local Northern store.
I was crying a bit, feel proud, happy, all the mixed emotions.
And he has this message for others.
I can say, try your best, even if you're deaf. You can do it.
For CBC News.
The exclusion of people with disabilities from the GNWT's new hiring policy is a major oversight. That's according to the head of the NWT Disabilities Council. People with disabilities were a priority group under the old policy, but they get no preference in hiring under the new policy. Denise McKee says many people with disabilities in the territory are already unable to get accommodations for work. She believes the new policy will make it even harder.
People with disabilities are still very disadvantaged in the employment sector. They're either unemployed or underemployed. Men with disabilities are 21.9% employed less than men without disabilities, and women with disabilities are 18% lower than women without disabilities.
After criticism from both MLAs and the public, the Northwest Territories government has said it's considering making changes to the new policy. It's set to take effect in April. Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and our friends at Yukon Morning love love and the Love Day. They love it all so much, they've written some poetry about it, and they're looking for you to do the same.
Hi, my name's Ellen Jones.
And I'm Ross Bragg, and we love Valentine's Day contests.
And this year, we're riffing off a well-known love poem.
And, well, Ellen, you're more the fact-based person. I'm more making stuff up. So how does that poem go again?
Okay, so roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you.
So we're taking that love poem, but we're Yukonizing it. Low bush cranberries are red, and their leaves are green. You're the cutest Yukoner I've ever seen.
And we already have some submissions from Yukoners, our listeners. This one came in from Emily White. It says, Teslin's a lake, Schwatka is too. I'd like to paddle their waters with you. And you can enter the CBC Yukon Valentine's Day contest by emailing yukonmorning@cbc.ca.
And you can win a CBC Yukon toque.
Forced and coerced sterilization of Indigenous people is still happening. The Survivors Circle for Reproductive Justice has supports available for Indigenous survivors. Join the National Registry and access up to $70,000 in healing support funds for individuals, families, and communities. The deadline to apply is March 31st. If you or someone you know has experienced forced and coerced sterilization, please call 1-877-386-0750 or visit reproductivejusticesurvivors.ca for more information.
The Kanuipita National Inuit Health Survey team is going to every community in Nunavut, speaking to Inuit about their health and wellness. And every answer will help us as Inuit determine our own priorities for a healthier future. Together, we will answer the question, Kanuipita, how are we? Find out when we're coming to your community. Learn more at qnihs.ca.
This is CBC North on your smart TV, because CBC News is now streaming local. Local news and weather on your connected TV or favorite device. CBC News North, streaming now.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang.
Long-awaited repairs are now complete on a vital crossing in the Northwest Territories. The NWT government announced that work on the Decho Bridge is now finished. 2 lanes are open to traffic with no restrictions. In August of 2023, the bridge was forced down to 1 lane with reduced speed limits. This was put into place after a support cable broke. The GNWT says it failed due to being anchored with a faulty metal adjustment bar. As a precautionary measure, all the cables were checked and the 24 adjustment bars were replaced. They also repaired guardrails and lighting. The Decho Bridge is the only fixed crossing over the Mackenzie River in the NWT. It gives vital access to the territory's capital region. There's a major push across the country to buy Canadian. But what does that look like for people living in a small northern community like Dawson City, Yukon? Chris McIntyre finds out.
There's a looming trade war between Canada and the United States, and with it emerged the trending slogan, Buy Canadian. In Dawson City, Nathan Aherniak is all about buying local. He is the manager of one of the town's 2 grocery stores. He says almost 40% of his stock comes from within the country. He says customers aren't as worried about where the products come from, but about it being affordable.
Overall, we find that
the consumers are still in their normal shopping habits. They are looking for products that are, cost less, but something that's going to ease their budget a bit.
Naherniak says things could change in the summer when more people flock to the tourist town, but Dawsonites have shopped local long before it was cool to do so. One local resident says her shopping habits have changed slightly over the last few weeks, but she too normally chooses Canadian brands first. Cynthia Chaubin says in a small community it's hard to get picky though. She says sometimes people have to choose between lower costs and locally sourced. Chaubin says for her, she'll choose local every time.
A lot of these businesses have already purchased the stock before all of this happened, so they've got money into it. So no matter what, they have to sell that item. So just keep supporting our businesses.
Another resident was even more eager to show her Canadian pride.
I am shopping for my supper. I'm shopping Canadian. I live in Dawson City, Yukon, and go Canada.
So here in Dawson, for the moment, it's shopping and business as usual when it comes to keeping it local and keeping it Canadian. Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
The first Inuk ever drafted to the NHL is speaking to Kivadluk educators this week. Jordan Tutu played 723 games in 13 seasons. He is the keynote speaker for a professional development conference in Iqaluit for teachers. He delivered his speech this morning and spoke with kids on Monday. He says they have many opportunities to succeed.
The sky's the limit. Set high goals, put in the work, and most importantly, get your education. It's pretty tough to get a job anywhere in this world without an education. So strive to be the best version of yourself.
Tutu also says it's okay to fail because you'll learn and know what to do next time. A Special Olympic speed skating coach is hosting an elite camp in Iqaluit this week. The goal is to train local youth and promote the sport in the community. Carl Cardinal has more.
Charles Hamelin is a six-time Olympic medalist in speed skating. He's one of the guest coaches for this week's camp. His goal is to inspire kids and help them develop a love for the sport.
It doesn't matter where you're from, even like Iqaluit, Quebec, Montreal. If you have a dream and you follow your lead, well, anything can happen.
Workshop, conference, and training sessions are taking place throughout the week. Martine Dupont is the head coach of the Nunavut Speed Skating Association and the Iqaluit Speed Skating Club. She explained that while it takes months of planning, the experience for these young athletes is well worth it.
It is a long commitment, but it's so rewarding when you see how much they improve throughout the week. It's crazy. Even after just one day of these higher level coach being here, you could see that they all improve.
Mika Tuwer is a young speed skating athlete who considers the club her second family.
It's fun, it's challenging, but it pays off and it'll help us for the next competition.
The Iqaluit Speed Skating Club, founded in 1993, has big hopes for the future. They are preparing to host the Territorial this coming fall and gearing up for the Arctic Winter Game in 2026. Carl Cardinal, CBC News, Iqaluit.
For one family in the Northwest Territories, curling isn't just a sport, it's a legacy. Veteran curler Carrie Galusha and her 15-year-old daughter Sydney are set to make history as they represent Team NWT at the upcoming Scotties Tournament of Hearts. Sorry, curling fans. This is Carrie Galusha's final Scotties before retirement, so the experience holds a special significance for both mother and daughter. We stopped by at one of their practices.
This is my 20th Scotties, and it's my last year I'm going to retire, and I wanted to curl one more year with my daughter, Sydney, and she's only 15 years old, so this is a pretty big deal for her to be going.
I'm excited to play against the other teams because I've watched them on TV since I was young, and to be playing against them is really cool.
Yeah, Sydney will be the youngest curler ever to go to a Scotties at 15.
Well, my whole family curls, so I kind of got into it from them. And I found my teammates for juniors while I was curling, so I've been curling with them since I was like 10. And then this year, me and one of my teammates joined with my mom's team.
Lots of practicing. We try to throw 3 times a week, practice, and then we curl in league, which isn't as much as we've done in past years. This team is we're not as competitive as you've seen my teams the last few years. So just lots of practice, some sports psych sessions, and just trying to peak at the right time, which is this week. You know, we're hoping we can win a couple games. I don't know how competitive we'll be with the top teams. We haven't traveled as much as, if we want to compete with the top teams, you have to travel and put a lot of work in. And we didn't do that this year as much as we have in the past. So we're just hoping to go and give the younger girls an experience. And then 2 of my older teammates, Shona and Megan, came out of retirement to curl with one last year. So it's really a mix of the vets and the youngins. So we're just trying to go and have fun and, see what we can do as an underdog. Dad curled, my mom curled, my brothers curl. They've been to the Briar numerous times. My older brother's been to the Olympics. He's a Canadian champ, a world champ. And then Jamie and I have dominated the NWT scene for many, many years. And now my daughter Sydney curls, and then my brother Kevin, both of his girls, Lila and Ava, all curl. So we have the next generation coming up, which is really cool.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
In your once stolen vehicle in West Africa.
That is crazy. Jumped in the car and then off they went.
I want my truck back. 300% increase in auto theft.
300%.
It's organized crime, well financed.
They are selling vehicles that are insecure.
They're working on it.
We hear that from a lot of automakers.
Yeah.
We think we found your car.
Oh my goodness.
Being Black in Canada, a space for news, documentaries, arts, and more, celebrating a uniquely Canadian perspective on Black issues, with the cultural moments that matter to Black Canadians. Visit cbc.ca/beingblack-in-Canada.
We're here to get it done! We're here to show up and show off!
Here we go, let's play the feud, Canadian style, here we go.
Detective Constable. Don't discount her instincts. She'll follow them with or without you.
Go yourself!
In my experience, it's best to know what she's thinking.
We're here to show up and show